So far, we covered if and if else. And both if and if else statements are built on top of one conditional judgment, one conditional operation, one Boolean expression. But sometimes the logic requires more than one Boolean expression, one comparison. For example, when we grade our test, we may want to say students' grade lower than 60 is F, 60 to 70 is D, 70 to 80 is C, 80 to 90 is B, 90 to 100 is A. So these are like a bunch of conditions that are on the same level. This kind of logic is achieved in Java by using the if-else statement. So here you have the if followed by a block. And if the expression 1 is met, this block is executed. Then we have this else if. If the expression 2 is met, the Boolean expression 2 is met, then we achieve this statement. All the way, you can insert as many else if here until in the end, you will have an else block, which covers everything that is not covered. And notice that this looks simple, right? Boolean expression 1 is evaluate first, then you do if. Now, what if Boolean expression 2 is already included in expression 1? So let's say if expression 1 is greater than 60 and the expression 2 is greater than 70, will expression 2 be covered? The answer is no. For if, else if, every expression is evaluated once, and then the first block meeting this Boolean expression is executed. The rest is ignored. So if we have a score of 75, while this expression is greater than 60 and this is greater than 70, only the first will be executed. Although the second expression is also true, it will not be executed because we already finished the first block. The first the Boolean expression is already met and we already executed this block. So nested if statement can become very complex, and the if-else if statement makes certain types of nested decision logic simpler to write. Now care must be used since else statement match up with the immediate preceding unmatched if statement. We already showed that just now, that once we remove the else statement of one embedded else if-else statement, the second else statement now becomes the first one matching the if, right? So in this case, we will need to use curly brace to properly divide the code block. This is one thing. Another thing is you can use this if, else if statement to make sure they are always in the same level of execution to avoid, in certain scenarios, the embedded if else. And here is the logic of the test score: 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, F. So let's look at the test score. As always, we finally have a Java doc comment that start to make sense. Ask the user to enter numeric test score and display a ladder grade. So this is the input, this is the output. Logic is to use the if-else statement to determine the ladder grade. Input is the test score. Output is, of course, show. So the logic here is test score, test score, test score, and you use if, else if, else if, else if, right? And finally, you have else. Now, of course, there's the bonus checking is when you check all these scores, or when you do any kind of check, always make sure you check boundaries. Boundary means by default, there's always a boundary around the input, but you cannot expect the users to always follow your boundary. When you ask the user to input a test score, by default, assume their score will be between 0 and 100. But what if they put -1? Usually this will not happen because the user will not intentionally input a minus number. but it's possible they will input 105, right? So in this case, you probably want to add a boundary checking. So here, what you are going to do is copy this and replace the else, right? Okay, so this is the if, else if, else if, else if, else if. Now, go back to the long qualifier, and we will reiterate what we talked about here. Care must be used since else statement match up with immediate preceding unmatched if, right? So if I do not have this block and I remove this else statement will start to match the if here. And indentation here is only for human eyes. So indentation can be deceiving. Always make sure, write curly brace and use indentation. Combine these two together so that your readers will not get confused. And the other thing is, it is possible that you will add other logic here. Without indentation, if I want to add something like some calculation, let's just say int I equals to 100, 200. Maybe just, it's complaining because this I is not used anywhere. So I'll say years on job. So now you may think you are adding a statement inside this block, but what really happened is you are adding this years on job after the if statement. So these two becomes one statement. And this if else becomes a totally separate statement, regardless of what this condition is, condition is evaluated to. You will always execute this part. And here, because we have an else statement, at least we know we made a mistake somewhere. If you don't have this else statement, then this issue will go unnoticed until it makes mistakes in your program. That's why I keep on emphasizing, always try to put curly brace, all right? Always put a curly brace after if and else statement, even if you only have one statement inside.